introductions. I'm Stephen Watson, the chair. We have Neil Button, the interim development management team leader. We have Nikki Donny, the principal planning officer, who will be presenting tonight's application. Rachel Lee, our legal advisor. Peter Mannings, committee support officer. Martin Plummer, the service manager for development management and enforcement. Sarah Saunders, head of planning and building control. Sam Terrell is here from Hertfordshire Highways, and Jackie Bruce, our 106 officer. I would also like to introduce the council's executive member for planning and growth, Councillor Vicky Glover Ward, who won't be taking an active part in this meeting, but is here in an observing capacity. And the first item is appointment of vice chair. Do we have any nominations, please? Yes.
I would like to nominate Joe Thomas, Councillor Joe Thomas, the role.
And Councillor Adams, do you have a name? Right, it's fallen down. Do I have a seconder for Joe Thomas? Councillor Dunlop. Now, are there any other nominations? Okay, can those in favour please raise their hands? Oh, that's unanimous. Okay, so we have Simon Thomas will be our Joe Thomas will be our new vice chair. Right, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we do. Got apologies from Ruth Buckmaster and Councillor Defley is substituting. Also from Yvonne Estop and Simon Marlowe, Terry Smith and Joe Thomas. And Councillor Adams is substituting for Councillor Marlowe. Thank you.
Okay, so Chairman's announcements, I'd just like to say, well, in his absence, thank you to Simon Marlowe for being very nice vice chair. Do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest because I own a flat in Block A4 of this development. However, I have no connection with the applicant. I'm approaching it with an open mind and I don't have any benefit or disbenefit by owning that flat.
Thank you, Councillor Devonshire. Right. Okay, we're moving on to the minutes from 16th of April 2025. That's pages 2 to 10 in the supplementary agenda pack. Do we have any comments or observations, or do we accept those? Can I you vote in favour of
Proposal first, please.
Oh yes, proposal to accept the minutes. Councillor Devonshire and seconder for that.
Seconded by who?
Do we have a seconder?
Right.
Councillor Stowe.
Thank you.
Right, to approve those minutes. Show of hands, please.
3, 4, 5.
And against? And abstentions.
2, 1.
Thank you. Right, members, we have item 6A now, which is 3/22/16/13/out, full application for residential dwellings, together with associated car parking, etc., plus outline application with all matters reserved for residential dwellings, commercial floor space, etc. at Goods Yard, Station Road, Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire.
Not being held in Bishop Stortford, the location of the site. Can you please tell all the councillors?
Excuse me, for your point of order, which what reference, which?
Why isn't this meeting being held in Bishop Stortford?
I don't think that's relevant.
think it's very relevant, actually. This meeting should have been held in Bishop Stortford, because that's where the location of the development is. Bishop Stortford should not be playing second fiddle to Hertford.
This is all webcasted, so people in Bishop Stortford can observe this meeting, as you can tonight.
It would be much better if people in Bishop Stortford attend the meeting in person.
There's no
It
meet.
would be better if it held in Bishop Stortford and more convenient for them.
There's no meeting room. We don't have a meeting room in Bishop Stortford. And would we have the means of webcasting it?
You could have found a meeting room if you really
I mean,
tried.
And
Okay, I'm going to hand you over to the.
through you, Chair,
Democratic Services.
as you've quite correctly said, the meetings are webcasted. Anybody can watch those online at any time as they wish, either now live or retrospectively afterwards if they choose to. And all of our formal meetings are held here all the time, and we webcast everything. So loads and loads of people can watch us online if they choose to, now or later.
Noted. Right, members. I now move to invite Nikki Donny to present the application in your own time.
Thank you. Just to repeat, this is a hybrid application for the comprehensive redevelopment of Bishop Stortford Goods Yard. The application includes full planning permission for 178 residential dwellings, car parking in buildings up to 7 stories, and an outline application with all matters reserved for up to 245 residential dwellings, up to 3,276 square metres of commercial floor space, 565 bay multi-storey car park spaces, and buildings of between 4 and 7 stories. The East Herts District Plan 2018 allocates the whole goods yard site for development of around 600 dwellings as part of a mixed-use development with office, small-scale retail and other community leisure uses. The allocation is supported by the neighbourhood plan for Bishop Stortford and part of the Thorley, 2033, adopted in 2022, the planning framework for Bishop Stortford Town Centre, and a refined master plan for up to 743 dwellings was agreed in 2022. It's also necessary to assess the proposal against the key aims of the NPPF and other relevant district plan policies. Drawing from the policy context and extent permission combined, it's clear that the principle of redevelopment of this site is established with a strong policy support planning several years. This is an image taken from Google Earth in 2024, showing the site in context with the existing built form and that of the surrounding area. On screen are images showing the site in its current context. Top right is a view along Dane Street towards Bishop Stortford train station on the left, and the existing development on the right. The top right is the existing block, developments A and B. The bottom left image is a long view of the site from the east, showing the car parking and the existing blocks. Bottom right is a view of the existing development from the White Bridge. Planning permission was granted in 2018 for a comprehensive redevelopment of the site. The approved site plan incorporates the station and railway sidings. In response to the decision of Network Rail to retain the railway sidings, the railway and sidings have been removed from the development area, requiring the submission of a new hybrid application for the rest of the site. As a result of moving the sidings from the development area, the density has increased with an uplift of 100 dwellings to 743. There's also an increase in height to most buildings from a maximum of 6 stories to a maximum of 7. The principle of the increase in density and building heights is endorsed by the revised master plan for the area. The existing site plan shows a smaller development site than covered by the extent planning permission. The dark blocks in grey show the Anchor Street multi-storey car park, and blocks A and B providing flats and some ground floor commercial units, which have already been constructed. The area in white adjacent to the block A has extent permission for a bus interchange and hotel, which now forms part of a separate application for full planning permission, due to be determined by council members in the coming months, subject to the submission of additional information from the applicant in the next few weeks. The area hatched in red forms the full application, and the area hatched in blue forms the outline application. Next slide, please. Moving to the full application in detail, 178 residential dwellings would be in 2 blocks of up to 7 stories, located between the existing footbridge over the River Stall and Sextoners Road, adjacent to the existing blocks A and B. There would be 89 one-bedroom flats, 84 two-bedroom and 5 three-bedroom apartments. The area immediately around the dwellings would provide landscaping and public realm, together with associated car parking, plant, substation and infrastructure works. The station forecourt opposite Plot B is also within the full part of this application. Next slide. Plot C to the east of the river footbridge was previously approved in outline with a similar layout and building configuration to the current proposal. The original outline permission included 2 buildings of 5 to 6 stories, 5 stories to the east and 6 stories to the centre. The current proposal is for 2 buildings of 6 to 7 stories, 6 stories to the west, rising to 7 stories towards Sexton Street. In terms of the layout, form and massing, the northern building would be rectangular and the southern building L-shaped. The form and massing and modern design is similar to the block A and B, which are 6 stories high and have already been constructed. In terms of design, gable ends facing the river contain 6 floors with a top roof within the roof space. The impact is reduced by splitting the 2 buildings into separate blocks. Varied roof forms and heights improve visual interest. External balconies are included for residential units. In terms of materiality, the details of all external materials will be secured by condition with the sample boards displayed on site. Next slide, please. 89 car parking spaces will be provided, 18 spaces to the front of Block C and within the courtyard between Blocks C and D. 71 spaces will be provided at surface level parking in the existing car park, ultimately moving to the car parking facility included in the outline element of the scheme. HCC Highways are satisfied that the provision of 0.5 spaces per dwelling is okay in this highly sustainable location. The car parking and ultimate relocation will be phased and included in car parking management plan to be secured by condition. No car parking is proposed for commercial floor space forming part of this application. A cycle parking block is also proposed to the rear of Block C. Next slide, please. Much of the public realm improvements follow the principles and details approved under the extent permission. The area in front of the station will be revamped with new paving and landscaping, including the planting of trees. To the south of Plot 6, there is an opportunity to have trees in planted beds that would offer some screening to the railway in addition to multi-stem flowering trees in the new seating area. This part of the forecourt is included in the outline permission. A recreational green pocket square would be provided in front of the station entrance, outside the cycle storage areas in excess of the current provision. It is intended that the cycle storage will be retained and relocated as necessary during construction. Street furniture will reflect the long-standing railway connection, with railway tracks being used as seating. This area will form the eastern edge of the green corridor, being created from the station between plots A and B and the River Stort, and forms part of the full application. Next slide, please. Moving to the outline application that includes up to 245 residential dwellings, an indicative housing mix has been put forward by the applicant as 86 one-beds, 145 two-beds and 14 three-beds. The main site area for the outline part of the application is to the south of Block C and runs along the River Stort down to London Road, across Sexton's Road and to the north, stopping just south of the station on its eastern side. The plans indicate the dwellings would be sited within 2 apartment buildings located adjacent to the River Stort and to the west of Sexton's Road, D&E, and in 1 building to the east of Sexton's Road, next to the railway sidings, Block F. In response to concerns raised regarding noise and disturbance to the future occupiers of Block F, following consultation with environmental health officers, a condition is suggested for acoustic insulation in the walls, doors and vents and openings. The car parking facility would be sited opposite Block C and to the south of the station building. Commercial floor space would be in a standalone building at plots A7, which would be located between the car parking facility and the station. The land to the north of the station forecourt, containing the existing cycle parking and ramp, is also now within the outline part of the application, and this would accommodate a new Class E office building, plot A6, and the replacement of the step-free ramp access from the station down to Dane Street. The hotel and bus interchange are subject to a separate application for full planning permission. Next slide, please. The building height parameter plan shows that the outline application will increase the height of Block A6, which has consent for up to 3 to 4 stories, to 4 to 5 stories. The highest part of the building will be sited adjacent to Station Road. A7 has extent permission for a building of up to 2 to 3 stories. The current proposal would increase in height to 5 to 6 stories. The car parking facility has extent permission for 6 stories. The current proposal would increase in height to 7 stories. The heart of the development would be up to 7 stories, with the remaining residential blocks D, E and F tapering down in height to the east. While the footprints of these blocks are indicative, the proposed heights of up to 7 stories are agreed in the refined Master Plan 2022. Overall, in terms of character, illustrations of Block C in the context of the existing development have been provided that show the development is in keeping with the surrounding built form. The architectural approach taken provides interest and a sense of occasion in this key part of Bishop Stortford and is considered acceptable. East Hert's urban design officers have been consulted and are supportive of the proposal, subject to additional details secured by a condition. Details of the design and layout of blocks A6, A7, D, E and F will be subject to reserve matters application submitted in line with an agreed phasing plan for the development. In terms of designated heritage assets, in addition to the conservation area at the north of the site, the Maltings buildings pictured to the west on the opposite side of the river are Grade 2 listed. While separated by the river, the site lies within the setting of these buildings. During the Council's consideration of the previous hybrid application on the site, it was concluded that the proposed development would enhance the character and conservation area and improve the setting of the listed buildings. Whilst the buildings now proposed are slightly taller than approved previously, the replacement of the service car parking with modern buildings would address both the river and highway, while similarly result in an overall enhancement to the special character of the conservation area and the setting of the listed buildings. Any minor harm through the addition of height of these structures would be at the lower end of the less than substantial and be outweighed by the public benefit of providing additional homes in a sustainable location on previously developed land. Importantly, this is at the time when the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The proposal therefore complies with national and local policies concerning designated heritage assets. Bear with me a second. Next slide. The 2018 scheme included standard surface water attenuation infrastructure, but did not integrate the historic watercourse into the public realm. Due to the requirement to retain the ordinary watercourse, which has existed on the site for many years, and following feedback from the LLFA, the leading local flood authority, the current scheme incorporates the realignment of the historic watercourse into a landscaped riverfront space, including open channel suds, swales, and flood attenuation within the landscape zones. This is a positive enhancement over the 2018 scheme and aligns with the updated biodiversity and SUDS policies, environmental agency and LLFA guidance, providing a higher quality green infrastructure. To achieve this, much of the land between the rear of Plot D and the towpath will be the watercourse attenuation basin. At its lowest point, the attenuation basin will be at 0.6 metres lower than the level of the existing towpath next to the river. Indicatively, to the rear of Plot D, a retaining wall will sit 0.5 metres below the level of the watercourse. Full details will be secured by a condition. The proposal includes the provision of a 2-metre wide shared footpath cycleway on the towpath running adjacent to the River Stort. Any reserve matters application which includes the connection between the towpath running alongside the river and its junction at London Road, as outlined in the phasing plan once approved, shall include details of the improvements to be made to the to the connection between the towpath running along the River Stort and its junction at London Road. The Canals and Rivers Trust have stressed the importance of protecting the towpath integrity and river biodiversity. A landscape and ecological management plan is recommended by a condition to mitigate impacts during construction and ensure long-term habitat protection. Next slide, please. The 2018 consent proposed a riverside public space and improved pedestrian connections, but without detailed towpath enhancements or green buffers. The current proposal builds on this, introducing a defined landscape strategy that realigns the watercourse, extending the riverside park space and stepping landscaping along the towpath. More coherent green links between the buildings and river, seating, play areas and spaces for social interaction, and the reconfiguration of Station Road with new wayfinding, seating and planting. Delivery will be divided between the full and outline applications, with full details being secured by condition. East Herts landscape officers have been consulted and support the proposal subject to conditions, stating that the proposal offers a cohesive network of waterfront and public spaces that establish a robust green infrastructure framework that would help mitigate impact on the landscape character and visual amenity of the area. Next slide, please. The 2018 consent also included a new link road, known as Sexton's Road, a multi-storey car park and cycle parking, which are currently in use, and a bus interchange, to be implemented via condition 56 of the previous consent. As mentioned before, the bus interchange has now been moved from this application, but remains part of a separate proposal for full planning permission for the hotel and bus interchange, with a delivery date of 2027, as per a legal agreement between the applicant and HCC Highways. In the current proposal, Sexton's Road is now reserved for sustainable modes only, being buses, pedestrians and cycles. A car parking facility is included close to the station, as well as the station cycle parking as part of the outline application. The ramp-free access adjacent to plot A6 replaces a more indirect link previously shown. This element of the scheme has been moved to the outline part of the application to allow a detailed design to be submitted and consulted upon at reserve matter stage. The applicant confirms the intent to maintain step-free access to the station throughout the phased development of the scheme, either via the existing or the new ramp. HCC Highways raise no objection to the scheme, subject to a series of conditions listed at the end of the committee report and associated Section 106 obligations and funding, cycle infrastructure and travel monitoring. Next slide, please. A cycle route through and around the site is identified in the movement and access parameter plan. That results in the improved routes to and in the vicinity of the site. Sexton Road forms a key part of the route and is currently open to cyclists. However, staggered concrete blocks on Sexton's Road and London Road, while providing access to cyclists and pedestrians, currently restricts the access as a through route to buses. The applicant and HCC Highways are undertaking design checks on the final outstanding matters and working towards resolutions on this by the end during the summer. Cycle parking management will be controlled by condition that require a management plan and full details, being the siting and number of new station car parking and temporary interim cycle parking, aligning with sustainable transport policy. Next slide, please. Plot C, being part of the full planning application for 178 dwellings and 89 car parking spaces, includes 18 EVC ready spaces and 71 passive EV capable spaces initially provided as service parking to later to be moved to the car parking facility. The outline scheme provides 123 spaces with EV provision. The total car parking capacity up to 565 spaces matches the current approval. There will be a mix of residential and public parking, with public provision based on a future car parking needs survey. Council parking standards require up to 320 spaces, but due to the high sustainability of and transport access, 89 spaces are considered acceptable. The Highway Authority supports the 0.5 ratio and is satisfied given that this is a sustainable location. No car parking will be provided for the commercial space, justified by the availability of other local parking and transport options. Car parking delivery will be managed by a car parking management plan secured by condition. Next slide, please. To recap, the quantum of residential development on the site. Plots A and B recently built. There are 323 dwellings. The current application proposes 423 dwellings. The total, if approved, is 746 dwellings on the Goodyard site. The housing mix of the full part of the application is 89 one-bedroom apartments, 84 two-bedroom apartments, and 5 three-bedroom apartments. The mix broadly aligns with plots A and B previously accepted by the council. Next slide, please. The developer is currently unable to meet the full affordable housing target due to verified financial challenges. However, safeguards are in place to review the viability later and increase affordable housing if the scheme becomes profitable. The policy requirement is 40% affordable housing. The current proposal offers 24 shared ownership units The tenure mix compliance, however, is not met. In terms of viability, the developer will be looking at a £25.22 million deficit across the site. An independent review of the viability assessment provided by the applicant confirms that the site would not be viable, and even with 100% market housing. The full application of affordable in total across the whole site, including plots A and B, which have already been constructed, will be 11.79%. Any uplift in profits will first increase affordable housing, and the future reassessment of viability will be done before reserve matters and will include car park revenue. Next slide, please. The application is subject to a number of Section 106 heads of terms. Both financial contributions and non-financial obligations have been agreed to mitigate the impacts of the proposed development on the local community and infrastructure. The total cost for this development being £2,268,690, down from £8,781,493 following the verified viability assessment. It is not unusual for the council to take a pragmatic and flexible approach to reducing financial contributions where the development is unviable. The contributions listed in the report and on the screen are necessary, directly related, fair and reasonable. Next slide, please. Drawing all of the issues together listed in the planning balance, when applying the planning balance to weigh the potential positives of the proposal against its potential negative impact, the positives of this hybrid application for full and outline permission for the comprehensive redevelopment of the site would demonstrably outweigh the negatives. The benefits of the scheme outweigh the minor harm identified, and the proposal is viewed as being acceptable. Next. Therefore, it is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and reasons outlined in the report and the completion of a Section 106 agreement. And if I could revert members to the late representative sheet that was circulated prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Right, I'm now going to invite speakers. First of all, we have objectors. We have Graham Oxborough and Paul Dean, who's... Are you coming up together? Yes. And you have 6 minutes in total.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I represent Cycle Stortford, a community group advocating better active travel facilities within Bishop Stortford to benefit walkers, wheelers and, of course, cyclists. Residents of Bishop Stortford, be they drivers or non-drivers, are only too aware of the increasing congestion and pollution in the town as the number of cars continues to increase, fostered by high levels of car ownership in peripheral developments and also by central developments such as the goods yard. Given Stortford's historic and constrained road network, the only ways to reduce car use is to persuade drivers that public transport and active travel represent safe, convenient and reliable options for suitable journeys within the town. We know that many people of all genders and ages want to walk or cycle, but are put off by the perceived risks of so doing on busy and congested roads. Cycle Stortford is therefore campaigning for the construction of 3 strategic cycle routes which converge on the town's railway station and therefore on the goods yard area. Even if these were built, however, significant barriers to safe cycling, walking and wheeling remain close to the site, notably the busy Dane Street and Station Road area. Funding is therefore desperately needed to provide safe, active travel routes to and through the goods yard area to link the 3 cycle routes into a network. We all know that central government funding for active travel was slashed by the previous government and has only been partially reinstated by the current government. As a community, we therefore have to look to Section 106 funding contributions to address the issues that I've described and others as listed in para 8.60 of the documents for this meeting. We support the view of Hertfordshire County Council as stated in para 8.55 that, and I quote, any increase in traffic flows is a concern for the authority and therefore mitigation is required, unquote. This resulted in their original request for a sustainable transport contribution of nearly 2.9 million, see para 8.58. This sum would have been available to fund significant active travel improvements in central Bishop Stortford around the goods yard area. And yet we now find that East Hart is being asked within this application to accept a reduction in the sustainable transport contribution to less than £0.7 million, only 28% of the original request. Local councillors from Stortford here tonight know that that will not buy much by way of new active travel facilities and is certainly insufficient to mitigate the transport impacts of this development. To conclude, it seems that the local community is being asked to absorb the developer's commercial risk on this project. This is unfair given the traffic burdens that such developments are placing on Stortford. We therefore urge the committee to insist that the original Section 106 contribution of £2.9 million towards sustainable transport is maintained. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm Paul Dean speaking on behalf of the Civic Federation, and good evening. Firstly, housing numbers and density. The developer wants to increase the number of dwellings so that the total for the whole site will be about 25% more than was approved in 2018, adding more pressure to the town's already strained infrastructure, services and amenities. This application was submitted in 2022. We therefore believe it cannot be made to respond to the more recent requirements regarding the district's shortfall in housing supply. Because the site is now nearly 1 hectare smaller than originally planned, the total dwellings should be less than the about 600 originally approved, not more. If the housing number was less, building heights could be less than 7 stories maximum, as required by the neighbourhood plan, and could reduce towards the south and the west to the river more than originally planned, thus reducing canyoning and other adverse effects. The development's proximity to the bus and train services mean that it could be better suited for bus Class C dwellings only. We also understand, though, that the town has a surplus of apartments, confirming that even that dwelling mix is wrong. The affordable housing allocation is insufficient. And finally, we believe that existing permissions in the town are already ready for about 1,500 more dwellings than the district plan's total, with adverse effects as described previously. We still believe the revised transport assessment doesn't assess the development's true 2030 cumulative impact. It also doesn't comply with the neighbourhood plan's transport policies. We've already heard about the sustainable transport contribution. We recommend that a condition for a local traffic management plan is included in the conditions for the Highways Authority to approve. This plan should follow MPPF and community infrastructure guidance including S106 funds, and that should be directly related to the development. We should be pleased to give possible project examples. We therefore ask the committee to refuse planning permission until these issues are addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have speaking for the application, David Bridges, Erin Futter and Simon Dunlop. So you have 6 minutes in total to share as you see fit.
Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm David Bridges, Managing Director of Solent Regeneration, a joint venture between Network Rail and Kier Property. Network Rail is Britain's largest owner of brownfield land, with an objective to make that land fit for now and for the future. That's why they team up with partners to realise the potential of sites, also creating funds for Network Rail to reinvest into facilities. This is the backdrop to Solent. Established in 2008, we developed brownfield sites across train stations. These sites are a hugely sustainable way of delivering new homes in locations where people want to live, are strongly supported by local and national policies, and help to reduce pressure on the green belt. Solent has a track record of delivery. Across many sites, we've delivered 1,200 new homes, over 120,000 square feet of commercial space, and contributed towards infrastructure improvements of over £125 million. And we're committed to delivering in Bishop Stortford. Already, we've delivered over 320 mixed tenure homes through Bellway, which are 95% occupied. A new co-op opened last summer with 3 local retailers coming soon. We're also pleased to confirm that the landscaping between the Millennium Bridge and the station has started to materially improve that journey. But I want to be candid. This scheme is stuck and cannot move forward unless this application is approved. It was always complex and challenging, but since COVID has become more so, as we've been hit by multiple obstacles, including far higher interest rates and build costs up 30% in the last 3 years. The Council has understood this and engaged with us over many years. We've had some challenging conversations, but we really appreciate that you've been prepared to look for practical solutions. In 2022, after significant public consultation, you endorsed a revised master plan for the goods yard. This scheme is in line with that master plan, including uses, heights and density. Even so, in any development, there are trade-offs. You cannot please everyone. We've worked up a scheme that best manages competing pressures, is deliverable and will secure widespread benefits for the town, and that has generated just 29 objections and over 60 local supporters. My ask of you today is to give us the go-ahead to complete the job. Not only will an approval give us the ability to get on with the next phases, it will give confidence to investors in the hotel and beyond that there is a real commitment to this project. Thank you. Erin.
Good evening. My name is Erin Putter and I'm an account manager at Just Build Homes. We worked with Solent during the determination period of this application to engage supportive voices for the Goodyard project. As a result, 66 individual letters of support have been submitted to the Council. All 66 are East Herts residents, and each letter sets out their own personal reasons why they want to see this development go ahead. People like Niall Taylor, a young man currently living with family and friends. He aspires to buy a home but cannot see this happening anytime soon. A strong theme amongst the supporters is that this project will provide a range of reasonably priced choices. 423 new homes, in addition to the 320 homes that were delivered in the first phase. That's 743 opportunities for local people looking for a place to call home. Opportunities for people like James May, a young council renter who said that the lack of housing options have made it difficult for people like him who are looking to buy. And Paige Durham, just 10 minutes from the site, supports the scheme because the different housing options will help local people onto the housing ladder. And it's not just young people who are feeling the impact. Parents and grandparents are concerned too. Laura Baker, a local homeowner, said, "I have 3 children and I have to consider their future." Supporters recognise the wider community benefits this project can bring. Mark King highlights the opportunity to reduce the use of private transport to the station, freeing up local roads. And John Saysell says it makes sense to build more homes on this brownfield site as there's a housing crisis. Tonight, you as councillors have the chance to help more local people. People like Niall, James, Paige and Laura. By approving this scheme, you can help people who grew up in the area stay in the area and bring real change to the people of Bishop Stortford. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Simon Dunlop, the day-to-day project lead. I'd like to thank officers for their constructive engagement as well as their considered and balanced report. Erin has talked about the positive responses from locals who want homes here, which mirrors feedback from the Bellway sales team. The majority of buyers are from across the district, looking to stay local, with younger generation of 25 to 35-year-olds making up around 50% of purchasers. Buyers cite station proximity as a key draw. We recognise the Goodyard is a challenging site. Over the years, we've consulted extensively, we've listened, and we've sought to find balanced and pragmatic solutions tested by 2 further design review panels. To give comfort, there is an extensive set of conditions, and we commit to further reviewing site accessibility. I reiterate that much of our application is an outline and will be subject to review at reserved matters stage. Chair, we have our architects, transport and planning team with us tonight. If you are minded for a direct response on a technical matter, they're at your disposal. In conclusion, I wish to stress our commitment. We need to give the market certainty to make progress, to deliver the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, I realise I forgot to give you the opportunity to ask questions of the objectors. And I think I should give you that opportunity now. Oh, I've got 2 hands up. Can I? Sorry for the inconvenience there. We'll call you back for your questions. Could I call up the objectors back to the? I'm sorry, this is a new process for all of us. Councillor Hill.
Hi, thanks, Chair, and thanks for everyone's presentations and speeches. On the point of cycling, I do agree with the first speaker. I'm a regular cyclist for cycling.
Councillor Hill, is your microphone on?
It is. Do you want me to speak louder?
Yeah, just speak a bit closer.
Okay. I'm a regular keen cyclist who cycles through Bishop Stortford regularly. I visited the site last night at rush hour when trains were coming back, and I spent about 40 minutes looking at the traffic. And in that time, I saw one cyclist bearing down on Station Road because it is disgustingly busy with cars, and there's no cycle infrastructure. So my question is, I agree with what you said, is if they're not going to be the joined up infrastructure and you can cycle to the end of the development and then hit a 40-mile-an-hour road, how is that going to encourage active travel?
We have been campaigning for, and a couple of the schemes of the 3 that I mentioned are significantly underway. I was actually at a site meeting this morning for the North Route, which will link the Bishop Stortford North housing developments directly to the town centre and into the station. There remains, however, for the last probably 200 metres, a very difficult section of road in Dane Street. That is where more significant infrastructure improvements would be required, and where the Section 106 money, as originally outlined, could be very usefully spent.
Councillor Dunlop, did you have a question? All right. Any more questions for the objectors? No, well, thank you, gentlemen. Could I call back the? Yes, so it's just questions only, no speeches. Do I have Councillor Dunlop and then?
This is related to affordable housing and viability of the development. You developed the first 2 sections, A and B, and we had affordable housing within that. What's the big difference, and why have we got virtually none this time round?
I think it comes back to that viability point and the build cost inflation, unfortunately. There's a study that Quad Consulting did, which said that if you take a typical scheme from 3 years ago that was making an 18% margin, like for like, it now makes a loss of 2%. And that, unfortunately, at this point in time, and that's the key thing, and Simon's mentioned, the reserve matters opportunities in the future. We are delighted if we can give more affordable housing, but at this point, we just can't commit beyond that because of that huge swing in build costs, because of the impact of fire safety regulations, because of the impact of interest rates and so on. So it is purely, I'm sad to say, economics.
And in terms of the actual infrastructure that you're putting in, is that of the same level as you had in the first stage?
Simon, I'm going to ask you to talk to that, but my instinct is yes.
Broadly speaking, yes. In some respect, actually, there's an enhancement in terms of the SUDS drainage and the watercourse. So actually, that's an enhancement under this proposal compared to the excellent permission. So in that respect, in that piece of infrastructure, that's an improvement, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to gauge, are you having to spend an awful lot more money on infrastructure this time round, which you didn't previously, or is it exactly the same as a proportion?
Broadly the same, other than that piece around the drainage, which is very complicated.
Councillor Copley.
Thank you. Sorry, it's just coming off something that Erin was saying. So obviously you talked about having various letters in support and people wanting to get houses here, but so I'm struggling to understand because you're not providing the level of affordable housing that's kind of been requested, but you seem to be saying lots of people buying here, even though there's empty flats in Bishop's Stortford. Are they going to be below market value, or is there something else why you think people will be buying these particular flats and the particular benefit, even though it sounds like they will still be highly priced? And I'm sorry, I just can't understand it.
Can I take that one, Erin? I mean, so I'll go back to the previous two schemes that Bellway have built, which, as we said, are 95% occupied. So, you know, those locations, they are very, very attractive for the young people that Erin talked about. I think, you know, they are broadly affordable in terms of, you know, some of the comparison and some of the opportunities that are out there. I mean, Simon, you know, obviously the market pretty well. Any comments from yourself? And then Erin, anything you'd like to pick up on?
I'd probably just to add to that, again, from discussing with the Bellway team, they have a number of schemes in the town. And actually of those schemes, they've found that the goods yard has pretty much garnered the most attention, largely as a result of proximity to the station, but also in terms of that pricing point, relative to what else people can get elsewhere. They certainly find that the majority of purchasers are, again, of a local, across the district. In fact, even of those who are buying from a investor perspective, trending around 40% of those are parents buying on behalf of their children. And certainly the feedback seems to be it's about community, it's about families, it's about giving the younger generation opportunity to move out, become from the villages, but in a more of a central location without going elsewhere completely.
Right. But it seems like they're still priced with the market, or they're more affordable. In which case, if you're saying, you sound like they're saying they're a lower price point, then I'm kind of confused about why you aren't selling them for more money and then providing more affordable housing within it.
I think the reference there really is more around the it's a very affluent area. I think as a comparison to low density family housing, flatted as an option is considered more reasonably priced to allow people to get onto the housing ladder.
Thank you. No, appreciate it.
Any more questions, members? Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Hill.
Sorry, just in reference to the people buying it, I mean, it's nice that parents can afford to buy their children houses, but not everyone can do that. And when I visited it last night, I noticed it's been heavily advertised as buy-to-let, with returns of 5.7%. What percentage is buy-to-let? 40% doesn't tell us anything about the total.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you do, Simon.
So buy-to-let in the scheme?
In the scheme, yeah. How many people are buying it as investment opportunities? Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, right?
Because that's not owner-occupier. We know rents are unaffordable. You know, so I don't think it is providing facilities for local people at a reasonable
Councillor
rate.
Hill, I don't think that's entirely relevant to the application. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Lady and gentlemen. So next we have from the Town Council, Mr. Richard Bauer, Councillor Richard Bauer, sorry, from Bishop Stortford Town Council. And you have 6 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come and address you this evening.
Could you, Mike?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come and address you this evening. I'm Richard Bauer, Town Council for Bishop Stortford. I'm also the chair of the Council Planning Development Committee. We have concerns about this development in as much as its compliance with the Bishop Stortford Neighbourhood Plan, Section GY. That refers to this development should in fact be designed with sympathy to the historic appearances of the town. It should be an attractive, welcoming appearance, giving a memorable gateway to Bishop Stortford for those arriving. It's intended that the this should actually give views from the railway entrance to the old Maltings buildings in South Mill Road, St Michael's Church, and possibly the river. If this was to actually go ahead as it is, none of that, in fact, would be possible. In fact, generally speaking, when people do comment on the appearance of the building, the buildings that are there, it's generally the parallels are generally drawn to that of communist Eastern Europe blocks of flats. The height of the development, according to Bishop Stortford Neighbourhood Plan, GY1, paragraphs 4 and 5, refer to the height of the building should be in a downward gradation from the northern end to the southern end, and it should avoid canyoning of the river. But the proposals that are tabled in front of us could show considerably higher than we would generally expect for that, because in fact the canyoning of the river is quite significant already, and this is only going to get worse. The intensity of the occupation, the outline planning was granted according to the Bishop Stortford Neighbourhood Plan, section 3213, gave planning for 600 residential units, which we've already covered, and the number of dwellings has substantially increased since then. We appreciate that East Herts District Council is in need of additional dwellings to meet other targets, but the concern there is that, or the belief appears to be, that a lot of people living there won't be drivers, which in fact isn't always the case. There's a lot of people who are already living there who are desperately trying to find places to park cars. And the other thing that's of consideration is the site is very close to London Road and Hockrell traffic lights. Hockrell traffic lights, as many of you may be aware, is an AQMA area, which is due to its high levels of nitrous oxide pollution in that area. With regards to the canyoning, something which is of interest is the area does have a population of water voles and also bats. Water voles require soft banks to the rivers. They require tall grasses and other vegetation, and in order to give them the life that they, or the environment they're required to live. But if this area was canyoned, as it appears to be, as it goes ahead, it will be, then obviously, as we all know, plants and plant life suffers when it doesn't get the light, and so therefore it would completely change the environment of the river, and it would make the ecological life far less viable. With regards to parking, something which does seem of concern is there's a lot of property being built here, a lot of extra car parking places being put in, but with Saxon's Way Saxon's Road only being open from the buses and cycles, that then means that this is going to be driving a lot more traffic up through Hockrell traffic lights and through the one-way system, which is completely unsatisfactory. Already the road is completely blocked at many times of the day. London Road is completely blocked with Lidl's or Aldi being there, and the road gets blocked with traffic waiting there to turn right into Aldi car park, and so it just completely gridlocks the whole town, and pollution is getting far worse week on week. I drive the town regularly as part of my work, and it's just, I can just constantly see the town getting worse and worse with regards to congestion and pollution. And so I recommend very strongly that this should very much be refused or otherwise cut back in many ways to make this far more in sympathy with the need requirements of the town. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, questions. I'm so sorry.
My apologies, yes.
Members, do we have any questions? Nope.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so next we have two district councillors, but to allow Councillor Goldspink to speak, it's because it's not her ward. I propose a motion that in accordance with paragraph 6.5.6 and section 6 regulatory committees of the Constitution, the committee agree to depart from the speaking arrangements in paragraphs 6.5.2 to 6.5.5 to allow Councillor Goldspink to address the committee in addition to the local ward member. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hill, and vote those in favour, please. Yep, that's everyone.
It's 10 minutes total.
So you have between you have 10 minutes in total.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you for allowing me to speak today as the local ward councillor, but also as a local resident, to the extent that I probably go through the existing goods yard about 10 times a week, I reckon, on average. I know lots of residents in my ward will be doing similarly, so it's a very important application and development for them. I wanted to give an overview, first of all, a sort of bigger picture type of perspective before going into a bit more detail. My personal view is that of all the developments in the district plan, this is the most desirable one in terms of location and sustainability. I don't know anyone who doesn't think something should be built there. It's right next to a train station, to the town centre, and it will be next to an improved bus interchange and by a river, canal, whatever you want to call it. And it should enable good off-road pedestrian cycle routes because of that. It will also provide a hotel and a residential and lots of residential property, which we do need, and it could provide a link between the town centre and South Mill Arts, and I trust that it will. Further, its mixed use and commercial space is welcome. It's unfortunate that we do not have the bus interchange or hotel as of yet, and that's going to be later on. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Whilst I'm talking about the bigger picture and slightly referring to what the applicant has said, one reason for building more housing has always been to reduce house prices. That was the idea for local people. Because we know how high housing and rental price is in Bishop Stortford and East Herts as a whole compared to the median wage of people here. We also know that we need affordable housing, a lot more affordable housing, and affordable means different things to different people. But there's certainly for the poorer people and the people on lower wages in the district, we need proper affordable housing, and it doesn't look like we're going to get that at the moment. We hear that due to a viability study, the developers can't afford anywhere near the 40% affordable housing and no affordable dwellings for rent at all, which is, as studies have shown, that the most needed type of affordable housing. Besides that, it's also the case, against what the applicants have said, that I believe quite a few people from London are coming into this development, and this means this idea of supply and demand that brings house prices down doesn't really work, because the demand and supply are in different locations in many cases. Also, as I think Paul Dean said earlier from the Civic Federation, the extra housing does put more pressure on what is a rather struggling infrastructure at present in Bishop Stortford, so that's not welcome. I'm aware that a lot of this is not relevant to actual reasons to refusing the application or considering the application, but I did think the context was important. A little bit more detail. The SPD for affordable housing is a material consideration, and expects a development of this size to provide 40% affordable housing, as does policy HOU3. And again, affordable rent is seen as most desirable. I can understand the reasons why we're saying this isn't possible at the moment, but it does seem that national planning policy is saying that a commercial company can lose money, can't lose money, but the very poorest can still be without housing. I would ask the committee to give some considerable weight to this understandable failure to meet that policy.
Also, the shortfall of the Section 106 money for sustainable transport, as we mentioned before, I do agree with comments made by the Civic Federation that car movements are underestimated, partly because this Section 106 money won't be coming through. It might be a sustainable location in theory, in terms of the train station is certainly very useful. The bus interchange will be. But for other areas of Bishop Stortford, as everyone living in the town knows, if you're trying to get to somewhere that isn't London or Cambridge or Stansted, if you're trying to get to the outer reaches of Bishop Stortford or villages, we're not a very sustainable town. So anybody who is wanting to go those routes, who live in the goods yard in future, the chances of them not having a car may be lower than what we're considering. I understand and appreciate the 0.5 ratio, and I agree in principle with it, but I fear that that's going to cause difficulties and more people will be owning cars than the car park spaces.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. As most of you know, I think, the Old Goodyard site in Bishop Stortford is a very large site in the southeast corner of the town, with the railway station on its eastern edge. It is within walking distance of the main shopping street of the town. It is 2.6 hectares in size and has been allocated for development in the district plan for many years. It is a very important site for the town, and it is very important that something excellent is provided here. I have several areas of concern about the planning application. The first is the number of dwellings which are now proposed. This new number is 423, and when this is added to the 323 which have already been built, the total would be 746. But policy BISH 7 in the local plan allocated about 600. So the number has now risen by 146. This increase is being proposed in spite of the fact that the size of the site has been reduced, has been made smaller, because Network Rail has removed the area of the railway sidings. A smaller site with larger numbers of dwellings leads to taller blocks of flats. This is my second area of concern, the height of the buildings. They all seem to have increased, have gone up considerably. Plot A7 has increased from 2 to 3 stories to 5 to 6. Plot D from 2.4 to 4.5. Plot E from 3 stories to 4 to 5. Plot A6 from 4.3 stories to 5 to 4. I appreciate the desire to make maximum use of the site, but I do feel that these increases in numbers and increases of heights would result in buildings which are much too tall and out of keeping with the style and appearance of other buildings in the town. A further disappointment about these residential dwellings is that the developer has no ability to provide any affordable housing. My third serious concern is my worry about the step-free access to the station from Station Road East and the railway bridge. I'm afraid that I found the paragraph 8.65 of the report quite difficult to understand. The present ramp down to the station is used every day by hundreds of people, adults pushing children in buggies, travellers pulling suitcases, people with walking difficulties, and cyclists pushing their bikes. The steps down to Dane Street are also used every day by hundreds of adults and school children. Please could assurances be given that step-free access will be maintained, either by the existing ramp or by its replacement in due course. And further assurances, please, that there will be public consultation on the layout and siting of any new ramp before any development of plot A6 takes place. I'm critical of one new ramp design which has been proposed, and I do think that public consultation on this would be very useful. So these are my three main concerns. 1, the increase in the number of dwellings. 2, the increase in the heights of the block of flats. And 3, the provision of step-free access to the station from Station Road East and the eastern side of the town. Thank you.
Right, members, do we have any questions for the councillors? For the 2 ward members? Nope. Thank you. Right, we can move on to the member debate. I'm aware that it's a tricky one with outline and full mixed in here, but Councillor Copley, you're
Yeah, I just wanted to start off, if we could, discussing that outline and full difference and what that means for us, so we will understand exactly what we can decide on, what we can't, what has already been decided. If
Okay,
officers could help us with that.
which of the officers want to?
Thank you.
Yep, I can help you with that. So the full part of the application, which is highlighted in red on the screen, that is the element of the hybrid application which is detailed, and that includes Block C and a portion of the station's square just in front of the train station. The outline application is in blue, that's the rest. And what we're asking for is for you to consider the outline and with parameters that are set in the plans that have been shown on screen. So there's parameters for the building heights, landscaping and cycle movement. But reserve matters will come should outline permission be granted. And then details of that will be secured at that point with full consultation and largely coming back to committee, I should imagine.
Councillor Deafley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's very good. And thank you to everyone else who's spoken so far. I'd like to talk about affordable housing. It's one of the really strong tenants, pillars, areas of the local plan. It's something that I fully support. I'm sure many residents and fellow members do as well. I understand from the pack that the financial viability study that the council sought outside consultation on it. And I want to know what that process is, and is that ongoing? Has it happened already? If not, would it, whatever decision we make tonight, would it impact on that decision?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the second part of the question.
Yeah. So I understand from the pack that in terms of the financial the viability of the affordable housing element, that you've sought outside consultation on it?
Yes, that's correct.
Has that already happened, or is it going to happen, or what's the...
When you say outside consultation, the viability assessment submitted by the developer was sent to an independent consultant for review. Yes, that's already been done.
And
the response back was conclusive that yes, it was the development would be looking at a deficit.
Okay. And then the weighting you applied to your slide, that it didn't seem to sort of, for me, it didn't have enough negative weighting against it. It almost been spun the other way around, which I found a bit odd compared to our local plan.
Is this in the planning balance?
Yeah. It's a limited positive, which is like a another way of saying it's a could be a strong negative, couldn't it?
Then we grappled with that point because the development, when tested for 100% market housing, is an unviable development that you'll see. So the 25 million or so deficit is with the 100% market housing, and so the provision of even a very small amounts of affordable housing, we've given that small proportionate benefit because it is affordable housing and it is an additional type of housing to the provision of market housing that's provided. Potentially there's provision for C2 senior living accommodation, so you get a range of different types of accommodation, and overall we're giving that not the top billing, but we're giving it significant weight, positive weight in the balance. But to your question, some affordable housing was seen as more of a benefit than having none at all, in which case that would have been more of an adverse development that would weigh against supporting the proposals.
Councillor Devonshire.
Thank you, Chair. This development has a significant deficit, so my question would be, why would a developer wish to develop this site? Maybe I'm not getting the right end of the stick, but going back to affordable housing, because I think a lot of members around this table are very concerned about this lack of affordable housing. As a lot of this application is an outline application, is there a chance as it progresses that affordable housing provision will go up? So, please.
Yes, the developer is committed to an additional viability assessment, And should the developments turn a profit, that will immediately look to providing affordable housing. And it's an ongoing assessment, given that it's outline permission.
Councillor Copley.
Sorry, just off that question, could it go down?
No.
Councillor Still.
The question I want to know is that we talk about reviewing affordable housing as the site goes on, but let's have some meat to that. How often it will be done, and at what stages it will be done, because in a way, saying it will be reviewed is a bit loose and doesn't mean very much, does it?
But the number of review mechanisms is ahead of term, so we can consider the number of review mechanisms that are appropriate for a development of this scale. You wouldn't review every year, for instance, and it's a costly exercise. And so it's likely that for a development of this size, you could get an early review before the spade's in the ground. And it's possible that you would have a mid-stage review and possibly at the end of the development, a late-stage review that would only result in contributions. And so that is a typical format of review mechanisms that would be supported under our affordable housing SPD. The nature of the review mechanisms is set out in detail in the Section 106 agreement that, should members resolve to grant planning permission, is still subject to negotiation.
Councillor Still.
I'm sorry, I keep going back. The other thing that seems to be a great concern to a lot of our speakers, and certainly to me, is this ramp business. Now, I want more definite thoughts on it. We want to know the ramp that's provided will be suitable for disabled people, wheelchairs, anything else, or mums with buggies, if you like. But it's spoken about in the report, but it's all a bit vague. What's the degree of the ramp that will be suitable?
The ramp is part of the outline application. So when the reserve matters portion of the outline application that includes the ramp comes forward, it will be subject to a complete design review. There'll be detailed plans. Those will go out to consultation. With the design will be reviewed to make sure it is accessible for all and provides the access that's required. Consultation will mean we'll respond to any comments, and it's likely that that reserve matters application, which includes the ramp, will come back to committee.
Yeah, more information will be known when the design of that building is A6. This is building A6 that is offered for approval, and how the ground floor can be designed. It is also a consideration that there is the bus interchange, the hotel work that's carrying out. And so the way that movement works around that area will be subject to change as well. And so it made sense to drop it into the outline element and to allow those phases of development to come forward, and then for a response to be prepared at that time. That will be, to pick up some of the speakers' points, there will be further consultation on the planning application. There will probably be consultation in the lead up to the application going in, as well as post consultation. So there will be a chance to feed into that process, and inclusive design will need to be maintained throughout the construction stages. And so at all times, step-free access will be provided. And so that is the commitment that the developer has committed to do.
Councillor Copley. Oh, and then. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was
Mr.
just going to, in
Helps.
terms of that, the ramp design, so we've seen an indicative design, which is in line with the DFT's inclusive mobility design guide for gradients. So that's suitable for mobility impaired users, basically.
So, were you wanting to speak? So, but you then, Councillor Hill, then.
Sorry, I was just thinking, because we've got the planning balance on the screen, I just had a couple of questions about that. So we've got, housing delivery 5-year land supply down in its own right is a significant positive, but I thought that was just kind of the lens that we looked through the other things on. Certainly when because I'm sad and I'm a solicitor, I looked at the case law on it, and something like Gladman said that, the kind of boost of the land supply in itself, you shouldn't be looking at, you should be kind of looking at the other bits. So I don't understand why that's weighted in its own right, but perhaps you could explain.
I think it's the benefit to housing at a time when we don't have a 5-year supply. And so the weighting is given significant weight on that basis.
But why, and maybe that's something to legal, why is it in its own right? I didn't think it got its own weighting. I thought that's the lens that we look through everything else. So why is it up there? I don't understand.
I think it's just the heading that maybe is a little bit misleading. You know, the key thing that we're asking you to consider is the weight that you give to provision of housing. And so I think what the slide is getting you to think about as well is giving weight at a time when the council doesn't have a 5-year supply. Do you give it more weight because of that, or do you give it less weight? We've considered you give it more weight, and the significant weight is the where we've ended up.
Okay, probably personally agree with that because of that. And then just, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has got some more points, and I've got some other ones I'll come back to on this.
Is it worth referring to the report as well? Because I mean, what we've got on the screen is a summary of the assessment, and so in the report we've explained where the weighting applies. So that's really where we would direct
Thanks.
members
It's just obviously when you're thinking of it like a scale, obviously we're looking at it on the screen there. And thank you.
Right, I'll bring in Councillor Hill next.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to traffic on Sexton Way, moving on to, I think it's Station Road and Dane Road. When I visited it last night, it was chock-a-block. A train arrived, discoursed it, and people were getting picked up. People were picking up their cars and leaving, and it was just a gridlock. And that hadn't dissipated by the time the next train arrived. Now, I can't see building extra houses in a multi-storey car park is going to help that situation. And we seem to be relying in a modal shift to buses and cycles. Has any consultation taken place to see if people are willing to do that? Do we have numbers of people that are willing to give up their cars?
That's a general question, and so I think we would point to the direction of the policies, and that's what these are the policies that members have to determine the application on. So the sort of the broader questions you're asking are not, you know, for this application to solve, but to try and answer that question as best as we can, we'd point you to the report. We'd point you to the location of the site, the sustainable location of the site. We'd point you to the requirement to optimise the capacity of the site in terms of developing best use of land, according to the NPPF. The NPPF talks about building in the most sustainable of locations, so it complies with that guidance. So it fits into all of the sort of national policy guidance. It also fulfills the important local role set with the district plan, and the district plan allows parking ratios to be negotiated on a side-by-side basis. This is one of the more accessible locations, and so it supports a lower parking provision. The highways officers have considered the impact of traffic as well, and clearly if you want more car parking spaces, that's going to create more traffic on the road. And so there's a balance to be struck between creating the sort of the number of trips, reducing the trips to promote other forms of development, and ensuring that sustainable travel is supported.
Councillor Burt.
I'm just wondering, because the Bishop Stortford neighbourhood plan states that the building shouldn't be any higher than 6 stories. And I just feel that obviously these neighbourhood plans are put together by people who know the area, work really hard to create a plan very much in keeping with the area. And we know that at the moment the district plan doesn't seem to stand because of the tilted balance. And now this particular section of this neighbourhood plan has sort of been overruled, if you like. I'm just wondering, you know, why was it decided that this planning should, you know, kind of, well, it should be overruled? Because I just feel at the moment all the local things that are going on, they take so much time. Really committed, passionate people get together to create these plans, and then they're sort of pushed aside to some extent. I just wondered the reasoning behind that.
The neighbourhood plan is very much factored into the decision-making process for this application. What we needed to consider alongside of the neighbourhood plan was the refined master plan that came along in 2022, which then allowed an increase in dwellings and an increase in stories just from 6 to 7. So that's a material planning consideration in this regard, and that's how we've then got to the point where the 7 stories are agreeable.
Councillor Deafley.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming to the car parking spaces, I just feel like this is a bit of a contradiction because in the plan, certainly in the MPPF and the local plan, we talk about sustainable transport moving away from vehicles, and yet we seem to be encouraging it in this application. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. I wonder, and also because of that, obviously, the height of the actual car park is quite substantial, as other people have alluded to. So I wonder if you can just tell me about that, please.
Thank you, Councillor. The outline application gives a range of potential heights for the multi-storey car park block itself, and so it isn't a given that it will end up as a 7-storey building. There's a planning condition that requires an assessment of the car parking needs, the sort of station car parking needs, to sort of dictate and inform the level of parking that comes forward as part of this development. So whilst there is an up to amount of car parking spaces, the end result of car parking will be informed by demand, and that will change over time. And so there is enough control within the application to monitor the parking levels. And it's probably a question that my colleagues from county might want to come in on as well.
Yeah, so just check, when you say contradiction between sustainable transport and the parking levels, do you expect the future residents to have lower parking ratios or lower? Okay. I think that really does come back down to, whilst it is a highly sustainable location, whereby we're happy to take a departure for, well, a reduction, should I say, in terms of the number of parking spaces, but people still will not just travel north or south on the train line or places where the bus services don't serve. So it's still having that flexibility, but on top of that, as Neil mentioned, there is a car parking needs assessment that's going to be undertaken as part of the outline application in a few years' time, once we have a better idea of the actual parking demand in the area, because at the moment we're still recovering from COVID flows, working from home patterns, deliveries, increase in deliveries and reductions in people having to go out to travel. So that will be undertaken, and that will give us a better opportunity to address the parking need at that time.
Councillor Devonshire.
Thank you, Chair. My question, or I've got 3 questions actually to do with the multi-storey car park, and it kind of leads on from what you've just been talking about. Firstly, I don't know how it quite works, but will the residential parking spaces within the multi-storey car park be allocated? If not, you're fighting with station car park users. Secondly, and I think you've kind of alluded to this, is the multi-storey car park adequate enough to accommodate the residential spaces and the station car parking? And thirdly, Block E is a very, very long way from the car park. So if you get shopping in your car, how do you drop it off in Block E? Because if you go to the car park, you've got to physically carry it to your residence, and it's a long way away. Thank you.
In terms of the multi-storey car park, there is an allocation for future residents, but again, that will be reviewed at the car parking needs assessment, which will use data from people that have purchased properties already, what the parking demand is from them as part of that car parking needs assessment, which is secured by way of planning condition. And then in terms of Block E to the south of the site, there is parking along Sexton's Road, on-street parallel parking, and also a smaller car park just on the southern corner. I don't know if it's easier to pull up the plan. So there will be parking along there, but obviously not as much as what would be in the multi-storey car park. Without zooming in, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but that's. And further along all the way along the road, along the Sexton's Road, there's
got the plan.
Yeah.
Councillor Stowe, and then.
Yeah, talking about Sexton Road again, I mean, I understood from the papers that it was limited to buses, cyclists and pedestrians. So how can people drive their cars up there and park on the side of the road? I just don't understand, the two don't go together. I mean, and also while you're at it, presumably there must be a site entrance, and it won't be using Sexton Road, I imagine, because that's a completed road. So could you, on the board, show us where the site entrance will be?
So there's a bus gate being put on to London Road, just at the, well, on this drawing, I'll say the northeast side, but it's the south of the site, where the bus gate will go. So you can drive down it, and there's a turning head at the bottom, but the only people driving down it, because you can't go through the bus gate, it will be future residents or delivery drivers.
Councillor Devonshire. Oh, yep.
My other question was where the site entrance will be rather than using that road.
In terms of site entrance for,
Well, to the new development we're looking at.
well, it's along Sexton's Road.
So you use Sexton Road to get onto the site?
Yeah, you come through, so from Dane Street, and then you go along Sexton's Road.
I can imagine that caused a few problems. Arctics taking cranes and diggers and.
Oh, for construction vehicles.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. So the construction traffic management plan needs to be undertaken, is a planning condition. So we'll look at the proposed routing and the best options when that's submitted.
I viewed the site back in 2018 or 17 when we got the first application. There's a gate right at the top where you can come in. We stopped there in the minibus and we viewed the site from there. And I always wondered if that's the site entrance.
Do you mean the gate, the current, where the bus gate is located? Yeah, that's the bus gate.
No, not the bus gate. There's an old rickety entrance there somewhere that goes onto the old sidings. Would they be coming in there?
Oh,
don't really know, do you? I'm asking you a question.
I'm not too sure, to be honest. But if you want to send some plans or photos over, we can get back to you.
I'm just interested. I just didn't want them to be using Sexton Road. That's the main thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Councillor Devonshire.
Yeah, my question was exactly the same as Councillor Stokes. If you go down there to Block E, how do you turn around? And I can't see you say there's a turning head, but I can't see it.
There is a turning head, which we've had swept path analysis undertaken to make sure delivery vehicles, HGVs, can turn. It is just north of that red pointer, just that there. There's a turning head in there.
Councillor Copley.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back to the points that Councillor Burt was making, obviously about the neighbourhood plan. I think, Nikki, you said that because we now had the master plan, that override, I just didn't quite understand. I wanted to understand why we were now not taking on board anything in the neighbourhood plan, it seemed, unless I've misunderstood.
We are still taking on board the issues that have, and the policies in the neighbourhood plan, but because this is a more up-to-date revised version of the master plan, it kind of does get taken into and given more weight in terms of applying the policies. But it doesn't mean that we're discarding anything else in the plan. It just
okay, because I do have concerns about the neighbourhood plan, which don't kind of seem to be being taken account of here. I mean, particularly like the heights of the buildings, we keep talking about that, but for me that's a massive issue. I mean, it's already, as people have said around here, a very busy area in terms of traffic and people, and I think there is that massive risk of canyoning of the river, and I just personally don't think, in conjunction with the neighbourhood plan, that it's right to go up to that height. But are you saying that we have to now ignore that because of the master plan?
yeah, the revised master plan is a material consideration and it has to be taken on board. Yes.
Councillor Hill.
Hi, so I've got two questions. Also, one's regarding Sexton Way and the bus and pedestrian way. Is that not going to be open to taxis as well? Surprised it wasn't.
At the moment, no, not open to taxis.
Okay. And My second, was a lot of talk of car parks recently, in the last question, and we're also looking at a modal shift here now. Do we think that the bike parking provision is adequate for that? And I'll give an example. So Cambridge Station, which is 20 minutes up the rail, has parking for 1,500 bikes, and it's about to be expanded to 3,000. And it's obviously got a substantial use of, bikes as a sustainable mode of transport. I just can't see building a 500 plus car park plus the other car parks you mentioned is really going to drive that shift.
Was there a question there?
I think the question is the bike parking sufficient for what we aim to achieve at the end of the day?
I think that this, in the report, it was one parking space per resident, or it was.
Yeah, that's correct. So one space per dwelling, and there will be 360 spaces provided overall. So that's been considered against the policy requirements and also the operational needs for the station, and that level of parking is considered suitable for the development for plot C, which is 178 long stay spaces. That provides one per dwelling.
Sorry, is that car parking or bike parking? Bike parking.
Bike parking.
I'll bring in Rachel Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it might be appropriate at this stage to just clarify in terms of the law in decision making, how you balance and weight different planning policies. So broadly, the more up to date and more recently adopted a planning policy, the more weight you have to afford that. So it's not that you ignore earlier policy considerations, but it's just, again, about that difficult decision you as members of the committee have to make on balancing the weight you afford. But the law is the more up-to-date policy, the more weight it is given. And just to clarify, also your point, Councillor, about the 5-year housing supply tilted balance, which again is a difficult consideration for members of the committee. But paragraph 8.3 of the report kind of summarises quite succinctly how the tilted balance is engaged here because of the lack of the council being able to demonstrate your 5-year housing supply. And again, back to basic principles of NPPF paragraph 11D, you have to give significant weight to that lack of demonstrating the housing supply in how you weight and balance.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. It was the fact it was a separate thing on the table.
On the table,
because I didn't think that's how you did it. I think you were looking at it through those lenses, and as you've just explained, exactly under these, so it shouldn't be given a separate weight, but everything else should be weighted because you're looking through it. That was my point. But yeah. Thank you.
Just as long as members are clear and I've directed the right paragraph in the report as to how you have to take that into account. Thank you,
Councillor Devonshire and then Councillor Deafley.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the building height, can I have some clarification? When you call it 7 stories, I believe the top story could be a mansard roof. So it's not really, it's 6.5 stories, isn't it? Is that correct?
It's correct that the 7th story would be in the roof, yeah.
And Councillor Deafley.
Thank you, Chair. Just changing tack now slightly, and looking at the geography of the situation and the River Stort. I'm a bit concerned actually about detritus running off the building works into the river. And I understand that this is only outline planning and that it will be conditioned. I want to know more about that because that seems a bit nebulous to me. I want to know what sort of conditions, generally speaking, are put into place to stop that sort of thing happening.
So could you just refine the question?
Yeah, so obviously it's springtime, summertime now, and when works are taking place, everything's fairly well contained. But we've probably all seen, well, I'm sure most of us have been to building projects, have seen the runoff being quite, almost torrential when the winter months come along. And I want to know how the detritus from the site will be contained in the site and not spilling out into the river, which is obviously running adjacent, as we can see from the map.
There'll be a phasing plan that will determine how the site will come forward in the first instance, and that will set out the phasing of development. There are a number of conditions relating to construction, environmental management, and there is also conditions on landscape, ecological management throughout the stages of development from implementation to afterwards. And so they're the sort of high-level documents that consider processes that affect as a result of construction. There are the section in the officer report that covers the enhancement of the river store and the biodiversity, the long-term implications, and that again that identifies that there will be a net gain biodiversity that will be delivered through the measures that are set out in the planning condition. The ecology team at county have been consulted and are aware of the various implications on, I think water voles have already been picked up by one of the speakers, and so there are conditions to consider the ongoing environmental issues. So the long-term landscape environmental management plan, that's secured by condition. The metrics of biodiversity are secured by condition. They'll be secured at each reserved matters stage in the process. The lead local flood authority have been looking at the details in very close in forensic form, it's fair to say, and they've suggested about 11 or 12 conditions that are included at in the report, and that ensures that the drainage conditions throughout the construction phasing and afterwards are maintained without having an adverse effect on flooding, and also make sure that there's sufficient water getting to the development, and the overall strategy is compliant with best practice, including climate change and so on. So we've got no statutory objections from the scheme. The Canals and Rivers Trust have been consulted. They've also raised no objection. The Environment Agency, no objection, subject to conditions. The Ecology Team, no subject to conditions, and so on. All those points: biodiversity, drainage, flood risk, ecology. We've got conditions set out in the report to address the issues.
Yeah, members, it being largely outlined, there's 74 conditions, and a huge amount of detail is in these conditions. For example, the very last condition covers part of the assessment of part of would answer some of your question, Councillor Defley, about the flood risk assessment and drainage strategy. But
Chair.
I remember noticing pages and pages,
Chair, just
several
might be worth
conditions.
looking at condition 64 in particular. I know there's 70 odd and members might not have read all of them, but 64 I've just spotted, I think might be assistance.
Yeah. Yeah, they're scattered all out all through the conditions on SUDs, etc., as mentioned in 65, for example. Councillor Copley.
Thank you. So just leading off of that, I noticed that it says about surface water drainage and there being a discharge into the navigation, i.e. the trust waterways. But at the moment, obviously the trust water, we don't have consent from the Canal and River Trust for that. Obviously they've got to discuss it with them. I was just concerned that what if they held back that consent? Is there another plan here? Is it, to do it, or what's the likelihood of that consent being withheld? Because does that then scupper everything from a drainage perspective? Thank you.
We're not the authority to determine that, and so the question is, if they did scupper it, they would have to have obviously a very sound reason to reject it. It's not a planning issue, so we can't guess what that may or may not be. And all I can say is that the drainage scheme has gone through a very forensic process. It's been sort of 2-3 years in the making, and the conditions that have been set out, and there's 64 that was picked up on about the interim measures, but there are something like 12 conditions, 13 conditions specifically to deal with the ongoing requirements from the lead local flood authority.
Thank you. Just thought I'd ask.
Councillor Dunn. Oh, sorry. I'm not looking over in your direction. Councillor Stowe, and then I'll bring him down.
Thank you very much. All it was, I wanted clarification on something. On the cycle pedestrian way on the towpath, the Canal Authority said that the 2 metre wide was quite okay, but I believe highways were unhappy about that. Have you revolved that now, or are you still unhappy?
Because it's not our land, we are limited in, well, we have no powers to say what size of cycle route needs to go in there, but we initially pushed for a 3 metre shared facility, which is in line with the DFT cycle infrastructure design guide. But the Canal and River Trust have their own standards. I think they need to protect the grass verge area, and therefore they're happy with a 2 metre. So really, it's sort of out of our hands.
Councillor Dunlop.
Slightly different subject. I'd just like to find out a bit more about who maintains the general space. I presume the Sexton Road is an adopted road by Highways, but there's lots of other footpaths, gardens, etc. And I just wondered if you could sort of talk us through who maintains what.
That would be via a management company that's coordinated by the developer
And
in long
to what-
term, in perpetuity of the development.
I understand that, but which bits? Like they won't maintain Sexton Road, for example. There's a pothole caused by grasses, I presume.
So the section of Google calls it Dane Street, but I think it's Sexton's Road up to the junction with Morton Petto Road there. That's adopted, well, to be adopted, and then the remaining part of Sexton's Road is currently private, and there's ongoing Section 38 checks that need to be undertaken as to whether we end up adopting it in the future.
And thank you. And but it's not decided as yet.
Not yet.
No. And then the car park as well, because that's a provision from the railway at the moment. So I'm just wondering who will end up maintaining that.
The car park won't be maintained by Herts Highways, so it would be a private company, I assume, at the moment.
Okay.
Councillor Burt.
On that note, I've had quite a few residents complaining about maintenance charges on their new developments. So I know we've talked a lot about obviously affordability, but if there's a maintenance company dealing with certain areas of the land and potentially the car park, although we don't know, how much of an effect will that have on a service charge for those people owning the flats? I know we probably don't know, but I think there's been a lot of talk about affordability. And if they're expected to maintain a great big car park, I just wonder who's actually going to end up paying for that.
I'm not sure if that's material. Could I?
And you mean there's 24 shared ownership units, so there will be a fee, a charge for the service charge, sort of wrapped into the overall affordability. Details of that at the moment we don't know. Section 106 will secure the provision of the affordable housing, making sure that it stays sort of shared ownership. There will be staircasing allowed, I would imagine, so that it allows the owners to staircase up to own the property over time. But there is no other mechanism to control the service charge through the planning agreement.
Members, did we want to ask anything about section 106? No. We've got our officer there not being asked. And are we are satisfied that the ramp will be dealt with in reserved matters? Are there any other areas you would like clarity? Councillor Devonshire.
Sorry, Chair. I thought I heard earlier on that the ramp is going to come back to this committee.
Under reserved matters, but it would, yeah. Members, are we,
If the reserve matters is called in
if it's called in?
for a planning reason, then it can come before the committee. There will be consultations, I mentioned earlier on, before the submission of the application. The consultation will be a sort of through the liaison process, either through community forums or the developer will be managing that process. That will lead to the submission of the application, and obviously they'll pick up feedback in that process. And then when the application is submitted, there'll be further consultation. If a member requests that to be called into the committee for planning reasons, and they do so within the protocol, then it will come back to planning committee.
Would that first of all come to ward members, or would it come to members of DMC?
It would be, ward members could call it in, and then it would come to DMC.
Right. So I'm looking over it. The ward members.
Chair, if I may, just one technical point about the Section 106 viability review mechanism to respond to a question raised by the councillors, that it will be drafted so that what's on offer at the application stage cannot be reduced, even if the deficit is increased, as opposed to, which we all hope, there is some surplus for additional affordable housing provision. But yeah, just to clarify, that's a drafting point that will be dealt with.
Councillor Stowe.
Again. All I wanted to say was that I understand that as members of the DMC, we can also call anything in on reverse matters. It's not just a ward member.
Yes, I believe we can, and the chair could. We're just
We'll check the constitution, but I think if a ward member, if a DMC member calls it in, they would have to consider their position on the committee itself, whether they were predetermined or predisposed. And so, depending on what involvement they had, would have to be considered. But my understanding is that the ward members would be more likely to call in the application, but any member can call in an application for planning reasons in accordance with the protocol.
Yeah, I mean, it would be my understanding that, I mean, we have an interest in seeing how this application proceeds. We wouldn't be predetermined necessarily by wanting to have a further scrutiny of.
Chair, any member could call the application in.
Great. Have we got any more questions, or do we want to add any comments to the debate at this stage, or are we ready to go for a vote? With this overwhelming silence, I am going to move for a proposal. And if no one else wants to do it, I'm going to propose that we grant planning permission. As per the recommendation that planning permission be granted subject to the legal agreement and the conditions set out at the end of this report. Is that seconded?
Yes.
Councillor Dunlop, thank you. And those in favour, hands nice and high.
Higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
And those against?
2.
And any abstentions? So planning permission is granted. We have no urgent business, so members, that concludes the agenda. I declare the meeting closed at 8:55. Thank you. Well, I felt with tilted balance, it's unless someone comes up with